The purpose of the open meeting is for the Commission to consider the matters that have been duly posted in accordance with the Government in the Sunshine Act. Members of the public are invited to observe, which includes attending, listening, and taking notes, but does not include participating in the meeting or addressing the Commission. Actions that purposely interfere or attempt to interfere with the commencement or conducting of the meeting or inhibit the audience's ability to observe or listen to the meeting are not permitted. This includes attempts by audience members to address the Commission while the meeting is in progress. Any persons engaging in such behavior will be asked to leave the building. Anyone who refuses to leave voluntarily will be escorted from the building. Additionally, documents presented to the chairman, commissioners, or staff during the meeting will not become part of the official record of any commission proceeding, nor will they require further action by the commission. If you wish to comment on an ongoing proceeding before the commission, please visit our website for more information. Also, representatives from FERC's Office of Public Participation are located just outside the meeting room to answer questions and assist the public with submission inquiries. Thank you for your cooperation. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. This is the time and place that has been noticed for the open meeting of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to consider the matters that have been duly posted by the Commission. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Commissioners, since the March 2025 open meeting, the Commission has issued 69 notational orders. Thank you. Chairman Christie.
All right, thank you, Madam Secretary, and move on to opening statements. First, I want to recognize the Rosner office for the great music today. It was their soundtrack. I particularly like The Blues Traveler and Godfather, James Brown. So great soundtrack. Coming up next is Commissioner C. in her office. We'll have the soundtrack in the next meeting. I want to, a personnel announcement, recognize Kevin Blake. Kevin has joined our staff from OGC. You can stand up. He is going to be joining us to work predominantly on PJM. Hard to find any work to do on PJM, but we'll look for some. And so thank you, Kevin, for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah. And speaking of PJM, I want to note that earlier this week, Manu Asthana, who is the CEO of PJM, announced that he's going to be moving back to Texas and with his family. And I want to note that I think that's a loss for PJM. I've always had very straightforward dealings with Manu. I've had a lot of, over 21 years, I've had a lot of dealings with PJM. I think Manu has been exemplary and worked very hard. It's been worked in good faith. Manu had the unlucky job of coming in when a lot of factors that were put in play 20 years ago sort of started to come to a head. And these factors such as the big increase in load that we've been seeing in the last few years, the loss of resources that's been ongoing for years, and all those sort of came to a head. But he has done I think an outstanding job. I've always found him to be very, very straightforward and open in dealing with me. So I want to wish him the best, wish his family the best. I also want to say this. I've seen in the last few days and weeks a lot of press stories about politicians in the PJM area, certain states, certain politicians being very, very critical of PJM and blaming PJM for a lot of the issues that we know are there. That's why we're having a tech conference in June to look at some of these issues. We all know there's problems with the capacity market. But I do want to say, a lot of the criticisms that are directed at Manu personally, as well as the PJM staff, I think are misplaced. I think that A lot of these problems that we see in the PJM capacity market have their roots in state policies, and particularly state policies that go back as far as 20 years ago. And I'm a fact witness to that because I was a Virginia regulator going back to 2004. And I've seen those policies, and I knew what the effect would be, and the effect have been what I thought they would be. And so I think to blame the great staff at PJM, and they do have a great staff, the people at PJM, Stu Bressler, the people who've worked very hard and dedicated their lives to trying to keep the lights on for us in PJM, I think are actually deserving of praise. And again, I say that as someone who, over the last 21 years, and I know that PJM guys know this, I've not been shy about being critical of the capacity market, but I think the problem's with the whole construct, and it goes back 20 years. So I just want to say, I think a lot of this criticism that I've been seeing in the media directed at PJM and its management and blaming them for everything that's wrong with the PJM capacity market, I think is in many ways misplaced, and a lot of it is because of state policies that have sort of come to a head just recently. So I just want to say that with regard to defending PJM and defending their staff who work very hard and work in good faith, by the way. Never doubted PJM's good faith. Having said that, I'm going to have to move to a concurrence where I'm going to criticize PJM. So I said all that, just sort of set it up. But I'm just going to note on the agenda items, when you get a chance, take a look at my concurrence in E11. That is a PJM waiver request, and it's a waiver for reporting on a transmission project known as the TransSource project. And my problem with that is the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission rejected that project 4 years ago. That project is still drawing QIP. And the Pennsylvania PUC rejected it. And what I really got a problem with is that PJM and the developer, which is majority owned by American Electric Power, AEP, are in federal court arguing that just because PJM approves a project, plans a project, and puts it in their regional plan, that preempts the states. And I point out in my concurrence, that wasn't the deal. Certainly when Virginia utilities went into PJM, that wasn't the deal. There was no preemption even discussed. In fact, there was a pledge against preemption, and I put the history down. So my concurrence is about the history. History matters. So anyway, I point that out, E11. So I guess after praising Manu and PJM, get back to Little Shot. But take a look at that. With that, I don't have anything else. Thank you. Let's move on to Commissioner Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I want to echo the comments that you made about Manu and PJM leadership. I think what you said was spot on and very well said. I have nothing more to add there. I want to welcome Kevin to the 11th floor as well. Just speaking about staff in general, it's just, and I say this almost every single month, but it's been heavy on my heart as I think about, it's not exactly an easy time to be a federal employee right now. And I think it's worth being said that the work you do is outstanding. We're busy. When you look at the chairman's letter, which I applaud your leadership again on that, and we're doing a lot of great work for the American people. And so I just want to say it as often as I can. Thank you to the staff for everything that they do. I don't have much to say other than I will note that we have been issuing our compliance orders on 2023 now for a while, and I don't want to steal Commissioner Rosner's thunder, but I will note that we just issued our first compliance order on RTO ISO matters. We're doing another one. We're acting on another one today. This is significant. I think these two orders in particular mark that these regions are making significant progress on their interconnection queue matters. And this is a part of our transmission reform journey that I've been talking about for a very long time. And so I think it's good to note it, and I applaud them. These are technical, very complicated matters that were done very well. So that's all that I have. Thank you.
Rosner.
Thank you, Chairman. I hope everyone enjoyed DJ Ross this morning. But thank you, Chairman, for bringing a little bit of light into the commission meeting room. I think that's great fun. Begin where I usually do, by thanking commission staff for their hard work delivering for us today a really important slate of orders, which I think will again all be together on. So I want to thank the work of the staff, the work of the folks who filed these things, and the work of this commission working so well together to deliver results for the American people. As Chairman mentioned, and you know, I'm excited for everyone to talk interconnection all day long if that's what it takes, but really excited that we were able to get a compliance with Order 2023 out for ISO New England. That's going to enable that region to put in place its proposal to bring new generation resources online faster and more efficiently. That's good news. And I'm really excited that we're adding to that progress today with the New York ISO's 2023 compliance. And 3 other 2023 implementation orders for other transmission systems operated by individual utilities. These reforms will have a major impact on our country's ability to get new generation online to meet demand, and that demand is growing. And it's really important to me that this commission continues to devote a laser focus on getting our Order 2023 implementation orders right and getting them out as fast as we can. Because the answer to the problems that we hear about at this table and in our dockets, it's all about unlocking economic growth in this country and to lowering the high prices. And the way you do that is you connect new generation to the grid faster. I also want to thank my colleagues on a transmission item that we worked out on the unanimous rehearing order on Order 1920 Regional Transmission Planning Rule that was issued last week. I look forward to implementation of that rule. I think there's a lot of promise for realizing reliability and affordability benefits of just doing smarter planning for American families and businesses and our state partners especially, as well as utilities. So finally, switching gears to just touch on the presentations that are coming on the agenda today. We've got a few. I'm looking forward to hearing about the gas electric system reliability presentation from this past January's extreme cold weather events. Now, typically when we have presentations like this, it's when things went wrong, which of course we have to do that. It's a critical important of our reliability responsibilities. But today, we also have the opportunity to highlight and learn from what largely went right last winter. So during these events, we saw the benefits of all the hard work this commission, NERC, state regulators has done to implement new standards, equipment, processes, just to be smarter, to prevent and mitigate problems that occurred in prior winters. And finally, last but not least, I'm also looking forward later this month to continuing that work where we'll welcome our state colleagues for our meeting of the FERC-NERC Collaborative, where we'll keep talking about gas electric reliability, which is a critical issue and has not gone away. So that's it for me. Thank you. Back to you, Chairman.
Commissioner Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here again. I will, first of all, echo the comments that my colleagues made about Manu. Really grateful for the work that he has done, as we talked about earlier this week when he called to let us know. He has taken on a really important role at a really important time. We're grateful for all of that work. Grateful, wish him and his family well, and glad for the long transition lead, and know that PJM has a strong process in place for the transition there. So I want to extend those thanks as well. Also want to extend thoughts and sympathy for the people of Puerto Rico this morning, reading the news, the difficult news we see coming there with so many hundreds of thousands of our fellow Americans without power. Really grateful for the hard work and efforts that have gone into restoring that critical infrastructure, and want to extend our thoughts and sympathies during that difficult time. Moving to the agenda items, there's not much that I would like to highlight specifically, again, not taking Commissioner Rosner's thunder. I do think it is important that we continue to move forward on our interconnection dockets, and I was looking through the list of items we're voting on, and we have a number of waiver requests for delays that are outside of our control when it comes to state policies and priorities, or when it comes to supply chain issues. I think there are a number of things we can't control, and when we can control efficient and speedy infrastructure development, that is one of the things that is critical for us to do when it comes to getting gas and electrons where it needs to go quickly. And I also want to applaud our hardworking staff for their detailed work on these very technical filings to help us get them right and to move through a large volume of work on a very quick pace. I'm very grateful for the teams that we have here. So I want to extend those thanks again as we move forward to vote on those items. And then the last thing I'll mention is I also have a personnel update. So excited to welcome Stacy Steep back to the 11th floor. I don't know that she wants to stand up, but, but I'm really grateful to have her join on detail as a legal advisor. So she was formerly with our former chairman, Willie Phillips, in his office, and he and others told me how incredible she is. And she's also had a very long history here at FERC and OGC with considerable expertise in projects in other areas. So first of all, I want to say thank you to David and to Susie and John and her team for sharing her with me. I know that is a huge loss to the teams where she is, but I'm even in the couple of weeks that she's been with me, I've really been grateful for the hard work and the temperament and the judgment she brings to this role. So very grateful to have her join us again on the 11th floor. And that's all I have.
Chang?
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, everyone. It's been a very busy month here at the Commission, and I just want to echo what my colleagues have already said, that thank you for the staff that has been working with our teams, both in my office and other offices, other commissioners' office on so many cases, especially including the ones that are on today's agenda. I just want to publicly thank the team because these are difficult cases and the details really matter, and I really appreciate your hard work with us to get it just right. I'm also really appreciative of the other commissioners and commissioner offices advisors to really work alongside with our team here to make sure that we get the best orders out to the public. So I just want to share that it's been a pleasure and to work with all of you and your staff. It's not easy, but it's been really wonderful. So I recently attended the spring CREPC meeting out in California to meet with many of the state energy officers and regulators out the West. CREPC brings these folks together. The chairman and I spoke with many state regulators at our visit and speeches there. We're learning a lot about the development of the Western market and the energy market designs and the resource adequacy construct, not a capacity market, have the potential to bring a lot of benefits across the West. And I will remain very, watching this very closely. It's something that I care a lot about. Though the West has unique needs and experiences and even history, I think there's still a lot of lessons to be learned from the East that can be passed to the West. So I will be keeping my engagement at that level. And at this juncture, I also want to encourage the market operators of the West to work in coordination with each other, to work together, particularly even at a time where the seams are not clearly defined, but we know that the seams will be irregular to maximize the potential benefits that these markets can bring to the West. I think it's not too early to work on seams issues. Today's order, I just want to highlight the same thing, the Order 2023 compliance. We earlier, I think it was last week, we issued one or 2 weeks ago for ISO New England, and today on the agenda is New York ISO's 2023 compliance. Again, these are extremely important but complex filings, and I very much look forward to working with all the other regions and other utilities to making sure that we have the best interconnection processes so that we can bring on the needed generation to our systems. So that's it. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, well, let's move on to the voting, Madam Secretary, and what you asked for.
Okay. Since the Sunshine Act notice was issued on April 10th, 2025, no items have been stricken from this morning's agenda. Your consent agenda is as follows. Electric items, E1, E2, E3, E4, E5, E6, E7, E8, E9, E10, E11, E12, E13, and E14. Hydro items H1 and H2, and certificate items C1 and C2. Commissioner C is not participating in item E8 on today's agenda, and Commissioner Chang is not participating in item E11 on today's agenda. As to E8, Chairman Christie is concurring with a separate statement. And as to E11, Chairman Christie is concurring with a separate statement. We will now take a vote on this morning's consent agenda. The vote begins with Commissioner Chang.
Great. Noting that I'm not participating in item E11, I vote aye for the rest.
Commissioner C.
Again, noting I'm not participating in E8, I vote aye on the rest.
Commissioner Rosner.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Phillips.
I vote, excuse me. I vote aye.
And Chairman Christie.
Noting I have a concurrence in E8. Now, that's the BlackRock order. I have a concurrence in that. And then I have a concurrence in E11, which I've already referenced. And with that, vote yes on everything.
Thank you. For discussion and presentation, our first item for discussion and presentation this morning is item A3, the System Performance Review of the January 2025 Arctic Events, a joint report by FERC, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, and regional entities. There will be a presentation by FERC staff members, Chasanov from the Office of the General Counsel, Renee Thorne from the Office of Enforcement, Robert Clark from the Office of Electric Reliability, and Amir Najafzadeh also from the Office of Electric Reliability. Presenting today from the North American Electric Reliability Corporation are Matthew Lewis and Kiel, Lyons. There will be a PowerPoint presentation for this item. You may begin.
Thank you, and good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. We do have some good news to report to you today. Over the past decade, the United States has experienced several extreme cold weather events that have challenged the reliability of the bulk power system, including the polar vortex of 2014, Winter Storm Uri in 2021, Winter Storm Elliott in 2022, and Winter Storms Jerry and Heather in 2024. The Commission, NERC, and its regional entity staff, in concert with the electric industry and in collaboration with the natural gas industry, have reviewed, analyzed, and improved natural gas and electric grid operations in wake of these winter storms. Joint reports on Winter Storm Uri and Elliott, a December 2023 Black Start study, and a system performance review of Winter Storms Jerry and Heather have been issued as a result. Each joint report provided recommendations aimed at addressing and bringing awareness to the ongoing reliability and resiliency risks posed by extreme cold weather and their impact on natural gas and electric operations. Today's presentation focuses on winter storms Blair, Cora, Demi, and Enzo, which moved across the United States from January 3rd through January 24th, 2025. Next slide, please. First, a few major takeaways from the team's review. Between January 21st and 22nd, natural gas demand peaked at 150 BCF per day. Electric demand peaked at 683 gigawatts, and generator outages peaked at around 71 gigawatts. Nevertheless, during the January 2025 Arctic events, manual load shed was not required. Based on the data and interviews, the electric grid, including generators, appear to have performed better compared to similar events due to additional generator commitments, improved coordination, and the implementation of lessons learned. The natural gas system also performed better overall, serving record levels of natural gas demand and experiencing only minor production declines and short duration force majeure events. The performance of the natural gas and electric systems demonstrates the benefits of actions taken in response to prior winter storm report recommendations, the need for continued coordination in preparing for and responding to extreme cold weather, and increased efforts to ensure that infrastructure needs are met to ensure future reliability. I will now pass it on to Renee Thorne from FERC's Office of Enforcement to discuss weather during the January 2025 Arctic events. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Chanel. The week of January 19 through 2025, January 2019 through the 25th of 2025 was the third coldest winter week across the United States since 2000. In the figure on this slide, each circle represents a weather station. Each weather station is then color-coded based on the winter storm with the coldest observed hourly wind chill temperature at that station. Neither Winter Storms Blair nor Cora are identified in this figure because no weather station experienced its coldest hourly wind chill temperature during those two storms. Winter Storms Demi and Enzo had the lowest observed hourly wind chill temperatures in pockets of the Northeast, the Great Lakes region, the Gulf region, California, and the Southwest compared to Winter Storms Uri, Elliott, Jerry, and Heather. Although much of the country faced freezing temperatures and some amount of snowfall, freezing temperatures did not last as long on average compared to Winter Storm Uri, and temperatures did not drop as rapidly as they did during Winter Storm Elliott. Enzo was the most extreme storm of the January 2025 Arctic events. On January 20th, Enzo produced a burst of winter precipitation across Texas and Louisiana. A mixture of sleet and freezing rain fell from Austin to San Antonio and to the southernmost point of Texas. On January 21st, for the first time in history, a blizzard warning was issued for southwest Louisiana and the southeastern tip of Texas. Snow fell in Gulf cities in Texas, southern Mississippi, southern Alabama, and western Florida. Temperatures in some parts of Louisiana fell to levels not seen in more than 125 years. ISO New England, NISO, and PJM all describe the January 2025 Arctic events as cold, but generally consistent with weather conditions expected during a winter without a major storm. In the southern and Gulf states, Winter Storm Enzo was marked by freezing precipitation and snow accumulation. In FRCC, only the northern part of Florida experienced abnormally severe weather. I will now pass it on to Robert Clark from FERC's Office of Electric Reliability. He will be discussing natural gas performance leading up to and during the Arctic events. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Renee. The graph on this slide compares dry natural gas production for the United States with residential, commercial, power, and industrial demands over the last 5 winter seasons. The gray shaded areas indicate severe cold weather events. While natural gas production dropped during the January 2025 Arctic events, total demand rose significantly and was adequately served by natural gas in storage. This shows the critical role that natural gas storage plays in meeting gas demand and thereby supporting reliability during these extreme cold weather events. Pipelines declared several force majeure events in Louisiana, Wisconsin, and Michigan, but they were relatively short in duration and had limited impacts to the bulk power system and natural gas systems. VACAR South indicated that the new Mountain Valley Pipeline, which reached full capacity for the first time during these events, played a crucial role in maintaining reliable natural gas supply during this high demand period by sustaining natural gas stable pressures. Next slide, please. The graph on this slide displays the largest daily production level decline for each of the recent winter storms relative to the average production levels in each region in the month prior. Each storm impacted each region differently. Of note, Winter Storm Uri had a disproportionate impact on Texas and the Mid-Continent regions. Winter Storms Elliott hit Appalachian production the hardest. Because these production regions were less impacted by the January 2025 Arctic events, production declined less. These events occurred over the MLK holiday weekend, which presented a challenge for some entities. Southeastern RC stated that the shortened natural gas procurement period forced generators to commit early. Entities within the Southeastern RC conducted fuel procurements well in advance with a strong emphasis on securing firm supply and transportation contracts for their natural gas, and also ensuring that backup fuel, such as fuel oil, was replenished ahead of these cold weather periods. I will now pass it to Matt Lewis from NERC to discuss the generator performance during this period. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Robert, and good morning. During winter storms Demi and Enzo, the United States set winter records in electric demand and natural gas consumption of 678 gigawatts and 150 BCF per day, respectively. PJM, MISO South, TVA and Vacar South all set winter peak demand records. The figure on the slide shows the number of unplanned generator outages peaked at 71,022 megawatts on January 22nd, 2025 across the study area. This is a reduction in peak unplanned outages compared to past winter storms and resulted in no manual load shed. These events also spanned 22 days. In contrast, throughout Winter Storm Elliott, 90,500 megawatts of generation was unavailable, resulting in 5,400 megawatts of manual load shed. Also, Winter Storm Elliott was 6 days in December of 2022. Further, Winter Storm Uri, during Winter Storm Uri, there was 34,290 megawatts of unplanned outages, resulting in 23,418 megawatts of manual load shed. In comparison, Winter Storm Uri occurred over 13 days in February of 2021. Next slide, please. The figure on this slide highlights the peak unplanned outages during the January 2025 Arctic events for each electric entity, as well as the date it reached its peak. Of the 11,298 unplanned outages, 4,773 had a reported event cause. Of those 4,773, approximately 54% were due to mechanical or electrical issues, 23% were due to fuel issues, 18% were due to freezing issues, and the remaining 5% were due to other causes. This differs from Winter Storm Uri, where the most common causes of unplanned outages were freezing issues at 44%, fuel issues at 31%, and mechanical issues at 21%. I will now pass it on to Kyle Lyons from NERC to discuss energy transfers and load forecasting. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, and good morning. During extreme cold weather events, energy transfers may be used to assist neighbors in meeting energy shortfalls. Throughout the January 2025 Arctic events, several electric entities reported declaring conservative operations earlier than in past events to defer, recall, or cancel planned transmission outages to reduce grid congestion and enhance transfer capability. TVA, MISO, and FRCC all reported returning key transmission lines to service or adjusting ambient line ratings to increase the transfer capacity available during the event. As shown on this slide, PJM was the largest exporter of energy during the January 2025 Arctic events. During typical winters, PJM both imports from and exports to neighboring systems. During winter storms Demi, Enzo, however, PJM exported 7,650 megawatts to support its neighbors while also setting a new winter peak demand. Next slide, please. The figure on the left of this slide shows the highest under forecast error for each participating entity for the duration of the January 2025 Arctic events. The figure on the right shows the peak demand forecast error at the peak demand day for each entity, with negative bars being under forecasts and positive bars being over forecasts. All peak demand days occurred during winter storms Demi and Enzo. For the January 2025 Arctic events, the participating entities were much better at load forecasting than during previous storms, and notably avoided double-digit under forecast errors. The highest under forecast error for winter storms Uri, Elliott, Jerry, and Heather were 11.8%, 12.5%, and 14% respectively. Whereas the under forecast error for participating entities during the January 2025 Arctic events ranged from 9.2% to a low of 2.7%. All participating entities had less than 3% error during peak demand. I will now pass it back to Chanel from FERC's Office of the General Counsel. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Kyle. So during the January 2025 Arctic events, the weather conditions were less severe than prior winter storms, and the natural gas and electric systems did perform well. While progress has been made, the natural gas and electric systems should still consider the notable operational practices discussed in this report, as well as continue to implement recommendations from prior joint reports as feasible, specifically the Winter Storm Uri and Elliott reports, the December 2023 Black Start study, and the Winter Storms Jerry and Heather system performance review. The January 2025 Arctic Events Report will be published later today and posted on the Commission and NERC's websites. Amir Najafzadeh from FERC's Office of Electric Reliability will now update you all on the status of Winter Storm Elliott and Uri recommendations. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Chanel. In November 2021 and in October 2023, the Commission, NERC, and its regions, they issued joint reports for Winter Storm Uri and Winter Storm Elliott, respectively. The Winter Storm Uri, it had 28 recommendations to prevent and mitigate extreme cold weather reliability risks, while the Winter Storm Elliott, it had 11 recommendations. In August of 2024, the Commission announced the posting of a new web-based public dashboard on its website called the Reliability Spotlight, with the goal to track and provide regular updates on the status of the implementation of the recommendations from Winter Storm Uri and Elliott reports. The dashboard displays numerous actions taken in response to these recommendations. For example, the new generator cold weather preparedness reliability standards, generator site surveys and site visits, the launch of NASB's Gas Electric Forum, and also drafting and conclusion of various studies. As reflected on the Reliability Spotlight, the natural gas and electric industries, they have made notable advancements in responding to these recommendations. And as you can see on the slide, from the combined 39 recommendations from Winter Storm Elliott and Uri, 3/4 of them are complete or they're close to completion. This concludes our presentation. We'll be happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you all for a great presentation, and in particular, I really recommend to everybody read the actual report. The actual report, which goes into more detail than they did here, is a very important document. It's going to be we'll make it available. Obviously, I think Benjamin's going to put it on the website. But read the whole report. You know, this is not just another report that we put out there and then move on to the next. Look at the importance of what happened here. In Winter Storm Uri and Elliott, we had massive load sheds, certainly in Texas during Uri. Scores of people froze to death. All right, you cannot imagine a bigger catastrophe to a grid reliability system than what happened in Texas during Uri. Elliott was not nearly on the magnitude and in terms of catastrophe as Uri was, but believe it or not, the generator outages were worse in Elliott than Uri, because Uri's confined it. The main damage was in Texas. So look at the catastrophes from both, certainly Uri, and then near catastrophe in Elliott, and then look what happened. A lot of groups came together, coordinated by FERC and NERC, to come up with recommendations so this wouldn't happen again. And as Amir showed in the last slide here, the vast majority of the recommendations that were made and were implemented. And a lot of them had to do with winterization. A lot of them had to do with gas electric coordination. NASB did a lot of good work. So it isn't just, FERC did it and everything got good. I mean, a lot of people work together, but I think it really illustrates in real life, okay? Real life, not theory, but real life, the critical role that FERC plays and NERC plays in making the grid more reliable. Because here is proof. We had no load sheds. Think about that. We had no load sheds last winter in these storms. And then compare to the load sheds that we had in Uri, and we had load shedding in Elliott as well. So it shows you that we can make the grid more reliable, and this is a great example. I want to mention a couple other things. So this is really, I mean, this is an important report. This is not one to just pass off. It's just another report from a government agency. This is an extraordinarily important report. I also want to note, as Robert said in his presentation, the critical role played by Mountain Valley Pipeline in keeping the gas system operating and supporting electric reliability and avoiding the load sheds. And there's a lesson in that. Think of the struggle it took to get Mountain Valley Pipeline built. FERC approved it multiple times, approved extensions, and of course, the history of the litigation and the opposition is well known. And frankly, it would never have been built had not the chairman of the Senate Energy Committee from West Virginia, Senator Joe Manchin, amended a bill to stop the litigation and get it built. And that's what it took to get that, and look at the role it played. Look at the role it played, and look at what it took just to get that one pipeline built. And it played a critical role. So I think a lot of good lessons here. One other thing I'm going to say about it too, the slide that Kiel showed, PJM is an exporter. PJM historically has been a power exporter, but that's because PJM has had surplus power capacity to export. Those days are ending. Referencing back my comments about Manu and about how a lot of the criticism of PJM is misplaced because it's coming from other policies, PJM is losing resources, and PJM played a critical role, as Kiel showed in that slide, of being an exporter. You can't export something you don't have. And as PJM loses its surplus generating resources, won't be anything to export. That's a huge problem. That's a huge problem. But good job, and most of all, this really is this is a important report about how you can make the grid more reliable, but what it took to do it. The reality of what it took to do it. And with that, I'll ask my colleagues, questions, comments? We'll start with Commissioner Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, thank the team for the report. I want to agree with you again and just talk about how critically important it is to highlight the improvements that we've made on reliability. You're absolutely right. With all of the challenges that we're facing on our system right now, I think we can all agree that we're going to need more energy infrastructure, not less. That's a reliability imperative from my view. And it's also an affordability imperative. I think that the more energy infrastructure we get on the system, the easier it is for us to provide power to the American people, our homes, our businesses, to provide it in a way that they can actually afford it. I just can't take your eye off that important ball as well. I want to ask one question about the report. So you list a number of actions that were taken over the past winter to give better outcomes on reliability on the system. And I think it's Appendix 2 that you talk about gas electric coordination. Could you tell me, what are your main takeaways when it comes to gas electric coordination and how that improved our system?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Commissioner Phillips. We definitely saw increased communication and coordination between the natural gas industry and the electric industry. A couple examples we can point to is just the frequency of the critical notices that the natural gas industry puts out. And so that gives the electric industry a heads up. Hey, we're going to be tight. We got to get ready to prepare. So that's some real coordination they're doing there. Another example is some data that is being shared between the electric and natural gas industries. The electric generators are sharing their burn profiles with the pipelines. And so why is that important? When the pipelines get that information, they can better prepare their pipes for the influx of gas that's going to be needed to meet that demand. So they can do things like increase line pack. So we're seeing some really good action in this collaboration and coordination between the two industries.
Thank you. I have to say, Robert, you're getting really good at this. All right. Thank you so much. That's all I have, Jim.
Well, thank you, FERC and NERC team, for this important report. And I just want to say I agree with everything the chairman said and everything Commissioner Phillips said. So what is there to add? Let's see here. I want to highlight two points that I heard you say and that are in your report. First, we had colder wind chills in parts of the Northeast, Southeast, Midwest, and Southwest, more severe than Uri, more severe than Elliott, and the system performed better. And second, we saw peak gas demand exceed any winter in the last 5 winters, including during Uri and Elliott. But again, better system performance during these storms. So, I think it's good to take a moment and say, hey, let's look at all the success we've had on the difficult and important work that FERC and NERC and industry has done together. But I also, think, as my colleagues have mentioned, we got to keep a wary eye on the horizon here. I mean, we have growing demand, changing resource mix, and that's just going to require us to be vigilant. And that's something I think will be an honor to continue doing with this commission. I have 2 questions, just to cover the horizon here and talk about some of the other things in the report that haven't been raised yet. First one, I saw the chart on exports and interregional electric transfers. I agree with the chairman. You got to have generation on the wire, but on this one, I just want to ask about the wire. Could you tell me more about the benefits of interregional transfer during the events this past January?
Yes, sure. We're discussing slide 8 here. Interregional transfers help neighboring balancing authorities. If one entity is short, we're able to move that power and help them if they have that energy shortfall. So with PJM here, what entities are doing is they're preparing again and collaborating more with their entities. So they're declaring conservative operations, which then allows them, as Kyle mentioned, to bring on more transmission. They can recall transmission outages, so thereby increasing transmission capacity, reducing congestion, and then, of course, increasing transfer capabilities. So we saw that play out during this storm, and we see that as another benefit to get ahead of it. They're trying to get ahead of this. Again, on the PJM side, working with their neighbors, TVA was able to bring on a specific line that allowed PJM to move as much power as they did. Another example, not related to PJM, but MISO, they were able to bring back a 345 kV transmission line, which allowed them to have increased transfer capability between their north and central regions. So again, collaboration, this is in the electric industry now. These neighboring entities are really collaborating to help each other out during these storms.
Thank you. And last question, if you'll humor me. So saw the slide on load forecasting. I know that was a critical issue during some of these prior events where we had big challenges, especially during Elliott. So tell me more. How did load forecasting? It went better during Demi and Enzo, and what are your takeaways from that?
Yeah. So this is slide 9 here. We're talking about here. So the bottom line, entities are getting better because of the experience they have in dealing with these extreme cold weather events. And they're always occurring over long holiday weekends, which add to the challenge because there's different human behavior that occurs over these holiday weekends. And so we're seeing that they're learning and being able to do these better. And another point to make here is that during prior events, we often saw under forecasting, which means you're kind of setting yourself up for an energy shortfall. Right, you're not going to have enough to meet that demand because you're under forecasting. We didn't see that here. It's very, very, very slightly we saw that here. But primarily folks are over forecasting, so being more conservative. Some examples of why we think this could be, why we're getting better. NISO told us that they're doing monthly and daily updates to their forecasts. So they can routinely go in and kind of tweak them, make real-time adjustments. ERCOT let us know that they have 4 weather models that they use as inputs to their load forecasting models. And they're seeing benefits of having additional models incorporated into that forecast. And one final point is that we're seeing a lot of electric entities bringing on meteorologists onto their staff to help with the weather forecast, because it is so important factor that goes into the actual load forecasting. So again, we're seeing a lot of changes that they're doing to help get those numbers down and meet that demand.
Terrific. Thank you, Robert and team, and thanks for highlighting those best practices. That's it for me.
I like the scientific description of, quote, different human behavior over holiday weekend. Commissioner C.
Thank you all. I really appreciate all of the work that went into this report. This was incredibly helpful, and I really appreciated the chance to read the full report. I also commend it to everyone. It's a really valuable resource to be able to look thoughtfully at what happened when the weather is above freezing, but still close enough in time that we can remember those time periods. And I also really appreciate that we can highlight and see what's working well. I think, as Chanel, as you said, when we started with some good news today, I think that's really encouraging to be able to pinpoint what's working and to be able to back that up with data. I also appreciate the full context that you all are providing, and some of my colleagues have highlighted as well for the warnings ahead that we can't necessarily expect the same results in future years if inputs are changing in terms of increased losses of critical resources and increased load demand. So still plenty of work to be done for all of us involved here. My colleagues have touched on a number of the areas that I was interested in follow up on as well. So all I will say here before passing it off is I'm particularly grateful for this resource when it comes to gas electric coordination. We're looking forward to the next collaborative meeting with FERC and NERC as we continue the discussions on these issues. And I've already found this resource to be very helpful in our preparation for that, and looking forward to that continued work. So thank you all again.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you and the teams behind you to put this report together. It's extremely valuable, and I'm so glad the chairman kicked it off by saying that. This is a great report. I'm very impressed, team. You've taken a very short amount of time and taken a lot of interviews, it seems like, and also the collaboration across the offices within FERC and between FERC and NERC. I'm just very impressed with how much you covered in a very succinct report. So great job. I don't have any questions. I do want to highlight a few things that you've already highlighted, but I think first and foremost, the report extensively discussed the impact of improved communication. And this just shows that both the gas and the electric industry folks, that people are running the grid, running the pipelines, and are sincerely working together to make this better for the American people. And this is extremely important. That's another reason why this report is so substantial and so important. And also, for example, I think SPP included new entities, like you've mentioned, but also they're coordinating with National Weather Service, Army Corps of Engineers in their coordination outreach to improve the visibility into the operations of the various different resources, including dams on the Missouri River. I think these are just things that, we didn't like what happened in the previous events, and I think every entity is sort of doing their job to make this better. Improving communication and the communication with the public at large, which is also extremely important. The report highlights improved outreach from ISO New England, New York ISO, ERCOT, and FRCC to provide better information to the public and the affected stakeholders about grid conditions. I think these are just really critical steps. On what you mentioned, Robert, on load forecast, this is also really interesting to see that load forecasting, one, plays a critical role, but also to have advanced positioning to alert the generators to be prepared to purchase the gas, or to make sure that the gas resources are available as the generators are approaching them. I think these are just really important, and improving the grid operators' situational awareness, the daily updates that you mentioned, extremely important. The report notes that TVA and MISO took steps in returning the key transmission lines. We already talked about the importance of interregional transfer. I'm very glad to see you show how PJM is exporting at a time that we actually didn't expect PJM to export, but regardless of export-import, I think the value of transmission during these critical periods are important to highlight. I also notice that the FRCC deployed ambient adjusted rating for transmission lines, highlighted in your report. These improve transmission transfer capability just when you need it. The weather is cold, heating is not a constraint, so you can transfer more. These are really just important topics that we've been talking about, and you really highlighted this all in one report. And then the critical use, I think you also mentioned critical strategic use of gas storage, and how you had those graphs showing that the demand shot up just like previous events, but the gas supply stayed steady, including the use of storage. And these are just really important. Again, I recommend everyone in industry to read this report. It includes a lot of great details. I also acknowledge that there's more work to do. I hope we keep the step on the pedal to make sure that we continue to really deliver for the American people. So thank you very much for this hard work and a very fast-paced work. Thank you.
All right, let's get ready for the next one. Thank you all.
The next item for discussion and presentation is item A4, a presentation by the North American Electric Reliability Corporation concerning impacts for large load integration. There will be a presentation by Mark Lauby from the North American Electric Reliability Corporation. You may begin.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you for inviting me here today to discuss NERC's ongoing activities to understand the risks from integrating large loads onto, or demand centers, as I like to call them, and how we could develop some mitigations for those risks. But before I get started, I did want to take a step back to provide perspective, consider the importance of these loads. I think we all agree, and the escalating need for energy to support the functions they provide. The application of electricity has always been a catalyst that society has depended on to stoke innovation and efficiency. And by powering demand centers, electricity will unlock much more. For example, just think of it as a base. If you look at your phone and you do a Google search, and we kind of normalize all that out, it would be about 0.3 watt hours for a Google search. If you use a ChatGPT, that requires about 3 watt hours, about 10 times more. And though you get a lot more value out of that search. And an AI-powered Google search is nearly 30 times more, or 9 watt hours. So, there's obviously substantial potential efficiencies of that in the future as everything over time, they can improve the efficiency of the chips, but clearly there's a need for increasing the energy requirements and making it available to serve this load. So at its November 9th, 2023 Commission-led Reliability Technical Conference, AEP's Bob Bradish outlined the emerging risk from integrating of large loads, things like artificial intelligence and data centers and cryptocurrency, which are all a little bit different than the other two. These risks are twofold: insufficient energy, of course, on one hand, or inadequacy, and operational reliability, performance issues, stability and voltage and frequency, and all those nasty things engineers like to talk about. These two elements of reliability could be challenged when we integrate these demand centers. NERC, in concert with the Reliability Security Technical Committee, or RSTC, organized a large load task force charged with understanding the scope of the risk, identifying potential impacts, and agreed upon mitigations. In this way, more demand centers can be added without impacting and maybe even enhancing the reliable operation of the bulk power system. So today I'll discuss some of the draft results, but remember they are draft. Further, we're monitoring the performance of existing facilities and documenting system performance of large data centers during events. NERC has held a technical panel session at our February board meeting to explore collaboration between large loads centers and industry, and NERC management has been tasked to develop an action plan. The slides that I have here today will cover these draft materials that resulted from these efforts and to provide the Commission with our current status and the way forward NERC is pursuing. So with that, I'd like to go to the next slide, please. This came from our 2024 long-term reliability assessment, and you can see where some of the growth areas are for demand centers, and also the reindustrialization of factories coming back to the U.S. or just being built in North America. And some of those we know how to deal with, like steel mills and all that, because we've dealt with them in the past, and some a little bit new kind of characteristics, so we got to get our arms around them. Next slide, please. I want to start out with some of the events that we've seen as we started monitoring some of the performance of the load against the system, and really we've seen some voltage sensitivities in the state of Virginia. In Loudoun County in July 2024, we saw about a 1,500 megawatt drop as a result of some system conditions. In this case, switching after a fault on the system, and within 50 seconds, 50, 3 of those voltage excursions occurred, and the load is monitoring that, and when it sees that happen, it comes offline because it wants to protect its cooling load. So that resulted in kind of, a shakeup of the system because it happened rather quickly. We've also seen another one of 1,800 megawatts in Loudoun and Fairfax counties, and we're now reviewing the results of that. My suspicion is it's going to be a similar type situation. In ERCOT, we've seen 25 load center events between 100 and 400 megawatts over the last couple of years. Because crypto does not necessarily have a lot of protections like UPSs, and so when something happens on a system, that is adios, and the technical term, right? And so, obviously working with and dealing with that has been something that they've been in Texas for, maybe advancing better control systems and protection systems. Next slide, please. So what was the result of the 1,500 megawatt event that occurred in Loudoun County? Conclusions where we need to be able to model this stuff. It's blood and guts engineering, right? So you got to be able to have good models, simulate, run it through a series of events, find out why it's coming, if it'll come off, why did it come off, what would you do to adjust your protection systems, or what would you do at the load to have them ride through these kinds of events. Also, the question is, should NERC be registering large loads, large loads owners and operators, or LOPs, right? Or should we be talking about registering them through the load serving entity? These are things that we need to start thinking about. And also, any new or modifications to existing standards is another one of the conclusions of that report. Next slide, please. Now let's talk a little bit about the Large Load Task Force, LLTF, and they had a 3-pronged approach. First, getting our arms around what is the risk, how big is the risk, how is it emerging, what are we seeing, and then after that, then how do we identify any gaps in the standards potentially to address these risks to the system, and then finally coming out with a risk mitigation guideline. But beyond that, alongside that, are there standard authorization requests that are needed so we can start adjusting standards? How do we bring the large load community to sit down at the table and write with industry standards they're going to follow? And so that 3-prong approach is actually accelerating a little bit. I've asked them to do that, but keep the quality high. And so the first white paper is now being reviewed by the Reliability and Security Technical Committee. And I'll just quickly run through some of the results. Next slide, please. What they did is they bucketized, because that's another thing engineers like to do, put things in buckets, right? High, medium, and low. And clearly the high is really looking forward. How do I plan to make sure I got enough resources to support this load? Usually we used to think about long-term being 1 to 5 years. We may have that much time this time around, but and stability, dynamic stability, how they're going to be operating against the generating plants and the loads. So it's the Laplace transforms, you might say. What is the dynamic stability of this and ride-through capability, oscillatory behavior, and the resilience? How do you make sure that that doesn't impact our under-frequency load shedding? Medium is again. Demand forecasting, again, a big issue, right? It's been a real challenge for folks to say, well, how much am I really going to have? We're seeing a major uptick in load forecasts in our long-term reliability assessment, but I think that we're even a little bit behind the curve because there's so many of these loads that really want to be integrated in the system, especially data centers and AI. Cryptocurrency is a little bit all over the place, but a little bit harder to put your finger on. But those two loads are, and are interested in working with industry to make sure the system is there and resilient and strong, because they don't want to get in that business. And then low power quality. Security risks, I think this is one that's been bucketed low, but may come a little bit higher as they go through the review process and realize that a lot of control designs that we have in the high and medium will pick up some robustness on the cybersecurity piece. And then system restoration, which is, once the demand comes off, how does it come back on again? And how quickly does it come back on again? So that was kind of their first set of prioritization of risks in the LLTF, the Large Load Task Force. Next slide, please. Some of the recommendations they came up with is, of course, making sure they take on that next step of what are the gaps in the standards, how do we mitigate some of these risks and the stability and et cetera, and then the characteristics. How do we define large loads? Is it 75 megawatts and higher, 50? You don't want to get into the distribution system. And so what does that definition look like? They also had recommendations for the major committee, because the major committee RCC has a number of working groups and subcommittees. Some are suggesting, like, we'll look at the model development. We have a working group that looks at model development. Also, system protection improvements and cybersecurity improvements too. And then overall for industry, continue to monitor, gather data on the performance. And let's talk a little bit about how connecting that load will increase reliability. You can think of a demand response potential here, for example. If there, that way you could have much higher use of generating facilities. Next slide, please. So the overall plan now for NERC, and again, it's the draft plan, is of course continue to have that large load task force continue its work. We're going to have more collaborative sessions between the large load community and industry, making sure they understand who we are and what their role can be in the reliable operation of the bulk power system, and make sure that there's an understanding and collaboration there, and then do some analysis on registration. What is the legal basis for it? These are user owners and operators, or users of the bulk power system. Consider if we should be registering a load serving entity to carry the water with the large loads, or if we should go directly to the large loads, and start beginning to write standards and what that process would look like. Some of the complementary activities, as I mentioned before, making sure the modeling working groups continue to do their work. We are going to obviously coordinate with EPRI, ESIG, and large load industry groups, improve our communications with this new group of folks that are on our system. Also, we have some coordinating activities with regional entities, like WEC is also gathering information about the performance, having collaborative meetings with large loads in the West and industry. And also NERC's North American Transmission Forum has developed an interconnection life cycle way to manage this interconnection of large loads. They've done it already for inverter-based resources, and now have a parallel effort. And the whole idea is, well, what technical information do you need? What administration information do you need to interconnect? So, of course, the forum is kind of a sister organization to NERC. So, again, thank you for inviting me, Chair and Commissioners, and happy to take any questions you have.
All right, could you go back to the slide? Just go back like 3 or 4 slides when you listed the 2 Virginia incidents and the Texas incidents.
Certainly.
Not there yet.
Not there. Next.
There you go. Yeah. Well,
that's one. We can
go back one more. Go back one more. No, you're too far.
This is the one. This is the
there it is. No, there it is. Yeah.
No.
Here's my question. Okay. Good. What I read about these Virginia incidents, both last summer and then just a couple months ago, and what I've heard from sources in Virginia is that, and you tell me if this is accurate, that what happened is several data centers went offline at the same time.
Yeah.
And because they are such huge users, it actually affected the frequency on Dominion's grid.
Yeah. The load comes off, frequency goes up, and then starts coming back.
And so, I mean, I'm not an engineer, but when you affect when the frequency gets out of whack, you can trip off the whole system, right?
Yes. That's a good engineering term. It goes out of whack. You're right. You
Yeah.
can. Both if it gets too low, that's why you have under frequency load shedding. And then also when it gets too high, because a lot of, we're running magnets here, right? And so that frequency is really, the devices depend on that frequency and delivery of energy. And,
Well, it seems to me this is a problem we haven't had historically. I mean, if my power goes out at my house, it doesn't affect the frequency of the grid.
because it's small load, right? Small beer compared to large beer, right? So
I'm not
you're
even close to Google, believe me.
Right. Yeah, so it's the amount of load. It's kind of like losing a large generator, right? Except
Right.
the opposite effect. It's negative generation.
So as we build out all these large load users, then this is sort of a new reliability issue, isn't it?
Right.
That has to be dealt with.
Yeah.
We know for historically, if we lose generators, it can trip off the grid.
Yep.
Now we got another issue, which is if large load users simultaneously go off together, it affects the frequency and potentially trips off the whole system.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's what you're aware of that, and that's what you're working on.
That's what we're working
find
on.
out.
We want to make sure that, and there's ways of managing that and engineering that, right? And understanding what the models are and doing the simulations and then minimizing the potential impact and separation, so that you can have this common mode that might take out thousands of megawatts. So you could quickly get to the a most severe single contingency here if you lose a lot of these all at the same time. So obviously we got to manage that. And again, that comes down to engineering, modeling, and continuing to work with the industry, in this case the large load industry and the power industry, to see how we manage that interconnection. And so we got asynchronous load here, right? And it's not even taking the heartbeat from the system basically, except the cooling system. And how do you manage that against the rest of the system? And it can be done. This is good engineering work. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you all are on it because this is a fairly new issue. No, you wouldn't have thought about a user knocking off the.
We're running
grid.
toward the risk.
Yeah.
We're going to make this is not something we're going to wait on like the winter or IBRs. Yeah.
Well, good. Okay. Let me ask my colleagues if any questions.
Good to see you, Mark.
Good to
Always
see you too.
It feels like it wasn't long ago that I was your attorney sitting beside you on that side of the table. We were talking to Joe and Cal, trying to stand up the ERO. Times have changed. And you're absolutely right, and I'm glad that you had the discussion with the chairman about frequency. And you taught me, right? I was supposed to be your lawyer. About frequency and voltage and how important swings in either way can impact the system. Now, and I think you said something that we're approaching the point where this can be an issue for large loads.
Yeah.
Help me understand, for the incident in Virginia in particular, would you characterize this incident as something that was an imminent threat to the reliability of the bulk power system?
I wouldn't say it's imminent. I say it's. We used to have the saying about a bird in a coal mine, but you don't want to say that anymore. But it's certainly an indicator that worse things can happen, right? And something we need to get on top of. The reason why I say that is because we still have a lot of stiff generation around to help, attenuate that frequency deviation. So yeah.
But thank you for clarifying that this incident in particular, it wasn't an imminent
But
threat.
it is an indicator.
Got it. And then, so what I'm concerned about, because this large load issue, it's on everybody's mind, right? And it's important. I believe it's a national security issue as well.
Yeah.
And so, is there a certain level that you have identified, or is the task force going to look at a certain level of large load that you think could trigger this reliability concern or indicator if there was a huge swing in either voltage or frequency due to a load loss?
That's a good question, and it comes down to modeling, and that modeling needs to be done so we can start seeing what are the limitations and how do we manage those limitations. Like I said in my earlier comments, if we do this right, we can maximize the amount we put in and minimize that risk. But we have to start modeling and simulating these different large load pockets and how they might swing against each other versus also the generation itself. But there's no number in my head right now. And of course it'll depend, or then you get yourself into percentages, right? Well, that's, is it Texas versus, so we have to do the blood and guts engineering. But anyway, I want to thank you for your kind words. Commissioner Phillips.
Well, I look forward to working with you on, getting to the bottom of this. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you for the presentation, and I really appreciate NERC's assessment of these recent large loss of load events. And it's clear from what my colleagues have said so far, this is an emerging area of concern for me and the commission. And I also, eyes open with the work you just presented to know that there's a number of different large loads that this is relevant to. Cryptocurrency, I think you mentioned, oil and gas loads, and data center loads. And so, if there's good news here, I guess the good news is that this progress is underway, and that thus far these events have been confined and well mitigated by system operators. But I think what I'm also hearing is that this is we're entering a new era of large, really voltage sensitive load, and we need to do the hard science and engineering work needed to be
You're
smart.
absolutely right, and it's a scale here, right? I mean, a steel mill's 100, 200 megawatt. We're talking thousands of megawatts. Cities of San Francisco or D.C., and one large load center. So we need to obviously make sure that's managed well, and the engineering is done to ensure that we minimize the chances for things to happen, and that comes down to good system controls. The 3 voltage excursions in 50 seconds, and we manage that a little bit differently, or do we work with the load to isolate the cooling loads from the system so they don't feel like they need to trip off? There's a host of different solutions there. You could reduce the amount of load coming off at the same time, by kind of try to stage it potentially. But this all comes down to just doing the engineering and seeing how you can manage the controls and protection of the system.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, one question just to get my head around how this works is, in general, when you see a customer-initiated load transfer to like a backup system for this size of large load, what does the sort of ramp towards that usually look like or ideally look like? And would a longer ramp have mitigated these grid impacts that we saw in July or February?
I mean, yeah. Again, that gets you're right in the solution space. I think that there's a potential there to manage it on the load side.
Mm-hmm.
Now they can ramp up pretty fast because they're peaker gas turbines, like they're jet engines essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So they can kind of fire those guys up pretty quick, and they're monitoring all the time. And as soon as they see that third one, in this case against the UPS, then they're gonna start ramping them up right away, and they're off to the races as quickly as they can.
Got it.
Because they can't afford to lose that cooling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And they can keep going without being connected to the grid by running their gas turbines.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mark, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. We talk about large load almost virtually every day in the work that we do, and for good reason. And there's so many different aspects of it. And often we're talking about resource adequacy or transmission or cost issues. And I really appreciate your briefing and highlighting the critical importance of the reliability piece of what we're working with. And so thank you for the work ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And remember that the definition of reliability is adequacy and operational reliability. So we got both problems here.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
We got to have the energy, and we got to make sure that it plays nice on the system.
Right. No, and I appreciate you not narrowing the task. So it's a really important issue, and appreciate all the effort there. I guess one question I have for you is just kind of help understand your approach and how you're thinking about this. We're always thinking about the challenges of load forecasting when it comes to large load and where that load is going to materialize and avoiding double counting issues. And I'm not an engineer, but it seems from a modeling perspective, if you're dealing with a pocket of one data center as opposed to multiple in Loudoun County and others, pose really different challenges. And so I'm just curious how you all are approaching that and what your thoughts are with dealing with the problem of forecasting.
That's a good question. And one thing we've been thinking about is bringing load forecasters together, maybe creating a user group so they can share best practices. Mm-hmm. To your point, there's some uncertainty here. There's some potential for shopping around. I think we see more shopping around in the crypto area than we do, let's say, in large data centers and AI centers. And when I talk to the large load folks, I say, why do you keep hanging around Loudoun County? Why don't you spread out? and they say because, well, that's the kind of load that's there. The data centers can share that load and transfer it, very much like we do with power, right? And so that's why they continue to build in certain areas. They also look obviously for areas where their energy prices are lower and there's land's cheaper. But they tend to be willing to put some money up front to say, I'm in the queue and I want to connect. The cryptos are a little bit more harder to get your arms around. But yeah, sharing best practices, I think is really important. It came out of nowhere. We're used to having this 20-year forecast based on the last 30 years. And you don't have to be an engineer on this. This is economics, right?
Right.
And what do you expect to grow, and how fast is it going to grow? And this really blew up when we started bringing in, especially the artificial intelligence abilities, and what that can do for us is incredible. Bad stuff can happen too, but generally I look at it as a positive thing. And so we need the energy to supply it so we can stay in front of that and make everybody more efficient and effective. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for presentation and the work you're going to do in the next few years. I have two questions that are slightly related, and I'll just mention it and see how you react. One is you talked about this common mode outage or common mode drop of load. I'm curious what kind of situations would cause these things, because I actually think, you think these as an indicator. To me, these large numbers actually really scare me. Like the potential reliability impact of these drops sound pretty severe. So related to that, I wonder you mentioned modeling and make the type of drop maybe more controllable, which makes a lot of sense to me. What kind of data do you think you need, and do you have access to this kind of information from the data center owners or users? And how do you anticipate to have to gather this data if you don't already have it?
That's a very good question, Commissioner. And a couple things. One is losing 1,500 megawatts of load is akin to losing 1.5 on a large nuclear plant, right?
It's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. But you usually run in reserves against that. So you generally have enough energy anyway in the system. Now, can you manage the dynamics of plants ramping against each other? And I think the industry studied those kinds of events before, not necessarily with load, but with generation. So I think that's why we have a little bit more stiffness in there. Now, when you start replacing all these machines with different kinds of machines, let's say computer boards like solar and inverters, right, they have no oomph to them, that may be a little bit of a different answer. But right now, I think we're in good shape. As far as the data, what we have found is that we can get data from electrical power companies, industry, real easy, right? That's NERC, Section 1600, Rules Procedure, right? And we can go get it. For the loads, they've just been good enough to work with us. And so is that going to be good for the long term? Probably not. Probably that's when we need to think about, them being part of the NERC family, following the rules of procedure. We can roll out a data request, and we work with our regional entities. We work with the electric utility, and we work with the loads to get the information we need. And again, generally been forthcoming once they understand why we need it and what we're going to use it for.
Okay.
But we do need those ability to request data about what happened at the terminals. What did they see? What the ramp up speeds and all that? We need to know all that. And so right now we don't have a mandatory way of asking for that data.
Okay. Great. Thank you. And I look forward to continue to engage on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for your presentation. Obviously, it's an issue that's not just coming, but it was already here, apparently, that is going to be an issue to certainly to deal with from a reliability standpoint. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Glad NERC is on it.
Thank you.
Okay. And finally, we have a presentation from Benjamin Williams and OEA. You're going to show us our new homepage.
Ben Williams, our Director for External Affairs, is joined by Celeste Miller, also from the Office of External Affairs, and Nathan Otluski.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Every day at FERC, the cost of electricity to consumers and a reliable power system are top of mind. And because they're top of mind, we wanted to highlight that directly on the homepage of FERC.gov. And with that, we're excited to share with you a refreshed homepage featuring those two things. I'll direct your attention to the monitors. You can see these two features right up top. They ask two important questions. How affordable is my power? And how reliable is my power? Let's start with the affordability and the map of the United States on the left-hand side of the homepage. Here you'll see the United States is illustrated to reflect how much consumers at home or maybe at their small business pay for power. At a glance, you can see that some states are darker in color than others. This indicates a higher cost to consumers. States that appear lighter in color have a lower cost for consumers. But let's take a closer look and click on the map. By clicking on the map, you'll be taken to an interactive map page that allows you to drill down state by state and to see the cost of retail power in your home state. This data is provided by the Energy Information Administration and is measured in cents per kilowatt hour. Notice that once you hover over the states with your mouse or even your fingertip on mobile, you'll be able to see state by state prices pop up. If you take my home state, for example, Iowa, you'll see that power there is around 13 cents per kilowatt hour at this time. Furthermore, if you look just below the map, you'll see a toggle. By toggling further back to the left, you'll see prices back in time. So, again, continuing with my example of my home state, if you go to 2004, you'll see that prices are lighter and the map changes. If you then toggle the bar back to the right and move to the present, you'll see certain states get darker, indicating higher prices. As you can see, the map changes over time. This map includes data tracking back to 2001 all the way up to 2024. And just below the map and the toggle bar, you'll see this information organized by chart. And you can see it organized by region and state by state. Now, let's jump back to the homepage and examine the right-hand side of the page where we highlight reliability. Celeste?
Thanks, Benjamin. Good morning, everyone. So by clicking on the right-hand side, you will be taken to a new page with data, which is also provided by EIA, that shows you how reliable your power is. Like the data on the cost of your power, reliability data is available by state and region. Here, the reliability of power is measured using two industry standard indexes. Let's break that down a little bit. The first one is called SAIDI, which stands for System Average Interruption Duration Index, or the amount of time in minutes the average customer is out of power during a year. Fewer minutes are better. For example, in my home state of Louisiana, the power was out on average for 584 minutes during 2023. The second index we use is called SAIFI, which stands for System Average Interruption Frequency Index, or the average number of times a customer is without power during a year. This information is also provided by state and region. So let's continue with the Louisiana example. You'll see that the power was out an average of 1.6 times in 2023. Again, lower numbers are better. Benjamin?
Great. So let's go back to the homepage and take one last look. You can see these features are right up front, but since this is a refresh, you can find all of your regular buttons and links available in their original spot, including the latest news and our events calendar. This version also works on mobile and tablet, and I invite you all to visit FERC.gov and check out these new features.
Thank you, Benjamin and OEA, Nathan, Celeste. Y'all did a great job. You know, as a state regulator for many years, I mean, consumers care about two things. They don't care about all the detail we get into. What they care about is what's the cost of my power and how reliable is my power. That's what they care about. And you can use any number of metrics, but EIA conveniently gives us the cost per kilowatt hour at the residential rate, and most consumers are paying a residential rate. and they're paying it in terms of cents per kilowatt hour. So it's appropriate metric, and EIA conveniently provides it to us. We just click through. So that was the easiest one to get. The SAIDI safety numbers, again, as a state regulator, when you're evaluating utilities, you always look at the SAIDI safety numbers in terms of reliability. Those are two very recognized metrics, the SAIDI safety numbers. There's other metrics, but SAIDI safety are commonly used to evaluate performance. And again, thank you, EIA. They're very available, and so I just want to thank. And Cal had a lot of work to do on this too, with helping us with the metrics. But thank you, OEA. Whenever you're messing with a website, it's a lot of work, and usually takes about 38 iterations to get there. But y'all, I think y'all did a great job, and I think this will be a tool for the typical American consumer to find out the two things that is most important to the typical American consumer, which is what am I paying for my electricity, and how reliable am I getting it? And again, thanks to EIA for the data. Any questions or comments anyone want to have? All right, well, thank you guys. Appreciate it very much. And it's live now, right? Okay, well, thank you.
Live now. Click on through.
Okay.
Thanks, Chairman.
Okay, thank you guys. With that, we'll move on to closing. Mr. Chang, you have anything?
None for me, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? No. I do want to say this. I sat here 1 month ago and I said Florida will win the NCAA. So I got to say that. Anyway, thank you all very much. We're adjourned. Yeah, it was good.
Straight from EIA, you would imagine they probably